ጀመረው የለውጥ ጉዞ በወንዶችና ሴቶች እኩል ተሳታፊነት ከተመራ የበለጸገች ኢትዮጵያን እንደምትሆን ዛሬ የተመረጡት ፕሬዝዳንት ሳህለወርቅ ዘውዴ ገልጸዋል። ፕሬዝዳንት ሳህለወርቅ ዘውዴ ተሰናባቹ ፕሬዝዳንት ዶክተር ሙላቱ ተሾመ የተሻለች ኢትዮጵያን ለመፍጠር ስልጣናቸውን በፈቃዳቸው መልቀቃቸው በአርአያነት የሚጠቀስ ነው ብለዋል።
አገሬንና ህዝቦቿን ለማገልገል ርዕሰ ብሔር ሆኜ በመመረጤ የተሰማኝን ታላቅ ክብርና ደስታ ለመግለጽ ወዳለሁ። ከዚህ በማስቀጠል አቅማቸው በፈቀደው ሁሉ የበኩላቸውን ሲወጡ የነበሩ ዛሬ ስልጣናቸውን በገዛ ፈቃዳቸው ለለቀቁት ለክቡር ፕሬዝዳንት ዶክተር ሙላቱ ተሾመ ከልብ የመነጨ ምስጋናዬን እንዳቀርብ ይፈቀድልኝ። እኔም እንደ ተተኪ አደራ ተቀባይ ብቻ ሳይሆን እንደ ቀድሞ የቅርብ የሥራ ባልደረባ ለክቡር ዶክተር ሙላቱ ተሾመና ለመላው ቤተሰባቸው መልካሙን ሁሉ እመኝላቸዋለሁ።
Parliament has appointed Sahle-Work Zewde as the country's new president. She's the first woman to hold the post. Zewde replaces Mulatu Tesome, who recently announced his resignation. Zewde is an experienced diplomat who has held several positions with the United Nations. Most recently, she was the UN Director General at its offices in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. She's also served as the special representative of the UN Secretary General to the African Union. Under Ethiopia's constitution, the Prime Minister holds the political power and the President is more of a figurehead. The President serves a maximum of 2 six-year terms. Recently, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali reduced his cabinet to 20 ministers, half of whom are women. Well, interesting developments coming out of Ethiopia. Now let's discuss this further. I'm joined live via Skype by Vice Chair of the Kenyan-based Okweli Party, Shefa Okore. Thank you very much for joining us, Shefa. Welcome to Africa Live. Although Sahle-Work Zewde's appointment is mostly a ceremonial one, give us your thoughts on the significance in African politics.
I think it is so important to have a woman in this level of political power, because it's been a long time coming for so many women, and for the struggle being that women have never been given the opportunity to just excel in political spaces. So to see a woman rise up to this space and to be elevated to this position for us, it is so inspirational. It just brings it back home to the saying that we always say, Womanla, where we mean women and power together. And I think women really deserve to be in positions of power. It's just about time that happened, because it's going to completely change the dynamics of politics, and it's going to completely change how we engage politically as a people and as a continent.
So inspirational. Well, Ethiopia has been praised for its reformist approach. The Prime Minister recently appointed a cabinet with a record 50% female representation. Yes. Do you think this is something that will inspire or influence a new direction in other governments now or in the future?
It should be something very inspirational that most African states should actually be living up to. It is setting precedents and showing that leadership does not have a gender anymore, and that leadership belongs to anybody who has merit and anybody who has the ability to deliver. So having females in positions of power, for me, it's just still something I'm still even grappling around, being that I'm in a political space and running a political party, and just feeling so fulfilled that this level of recognition and honor is being bestowed upon people who've always been active in politics and not being heard, women who've always toiled and women who've always supported and built political organizations but have always been sidelined. So it is something that a lot of African states should aspire to, including my own country, Kenya.
Well, as you say, the African continent is still grappling with female representation in positions of power. What exactly is holding us back?
Lack of political will and patriarchy, because political power is deeply, deeply patriarchal, and it is built on an institution that sidelines women just because they are women, and not understanding the importance of having equal representation of women. So it is that idea of seeing a woman in power, and especially politics, and running a country and running an institution in countries as a threat. So it's still deeply patriarchal, and just having more women in these spaces will be able to dismantle this and allow more women in this space. And also realizing that the political space is very violent because it's been male-dominated and it's been filled with a lot of disruption. It's been filled with a lot of misogyny. So having more women in these spaces will highlight these issues, will help us create more solutions, will help us create political spaces that women can engage in and not feel violated.
Okay, thank you very much for your perspective there. That was Shefa Okore there she's the vice chair of the Kenyan-based Ukweli Party. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa, France 24's program focused on the continent. I'm Charlie James and these are the headlines. Ethiopia's parliament elects Sahle-Work Zewde as the country's first female president. The experienced diplomat is now Africa's only female head of state. The lone survivor of a 2005 migrant massacre in the Gambia campaigns for justice. Our correspondent talks to him about efforts to hold former President Yahya Jammeh responsible. And presidential candidates in Madagascar spending big to attract voters. Thanks to lax campaign finance laws, the country's elections are regularly among the world's priciest. She's been UN Undersecretary General, a special representative to the African Union, and now Sahle-Work Zewde is Ethiopia's first female president. She was elected to the ceremonial position by Parliament on Thursday. This 1 week after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed appointed a cabinet with half the posts held by women. France 24 regional correspondent Julia Steer sent us this report with more on how Sahle-Work is part of the push to achieve gender parity in Ethiopia.
Sahle-Work Zewde was unanimously elected as Ethiopia's president by its two houses of parliament early in the day on Wednesday. Now, the role of the president is largely ceremonial. It's the prime minister who is the head of state and who holds executive power. But the move is still historic in a country that has seen huge shifts in its political system over the last few months since Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed took office last April. Now, Sahle-Work is currently a high-ranking diplomat with the United Nations. She serves as a special representative for the Secretary General to the African Union. In her first speech to Parliament, she stressed the importance of unity throughout the country and said she would continue to speak for women as she has done throughout her diplomatic career. Now, her nomination as president comes just a week after another historic move. Last week, the prime minister appointed 10 new female cabinet members, bringing the portion of female members in Ethiopia's cabinet to 50% and making Ethiopia just the third country in Africa to reach gender parity in its cabinet. Regional analysts are largely celebrating.
In a unanimous vote, Ethiopian lawmakers picked career diplomat Zewde, who is 68, to replace Mulatu Teshome, who resigned under unclear circumstances. She vowed to serve her country and its people with her utmost efforts in her acceptance speech before the parliament's two houses. Zewde was Ethiopia's permanent envoy at the African Union. She had also served as Ethiopia's ambassador to various countries.
Ethiopia made history on Thursday by electing its first female president and Africa's only current female head of state. In a unanimous vote, lawmakers appointed experienced diplomat Sahle-Work Zewde. After being sworn into parliament, she promised to work hard and use her position to achieve gender equality in the country.
The absence of peace above all victimizes women. So during my tenure, I will emphasize women's roles in ensuring peace, so that women can enjoy the dividends that come with peace.
It's a drive shared by the country's reformist Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who last week elected his 20-person cabinet with half the posts filled by women. Although the president's role in Ethiopia is largely ceremonial, the position carries symbolic weight and social influence. She joins a handful of recent female African presidents, including Liberia's Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Malawi's Joyce Banda, both of whom held executive powers. President Sahle-Work has served as ambassador to Ethiopia in Senegal, Djibouti and France. She's also held a number of UN positions, including head of peacebuilding in the Central African Republic, and her most recent post as the UN representative to the African Union. It's expected she'll serve 2 6-year terms as head of state.
Speaking of making history, Ethiopia members of parliament have elected Sahle-Work Zewde as the country's first female president. Ms. Sahle-Work, who is an experienced diplomat, becomes Africa's only female head of state.
Ethiopia's parliament has approved senior diplomat Sahle-Work Zewde as the country's first female president. Sahle-Work was voted in after the unexpected resignation of her predecessor Mulatu Teshome. Her election to the ceremonial position comes just a week after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed appointed a cabinet that is dominated by women. President Sahle has promised to work hard to make gender equality a reality in Ethiopia. President Uhuru Kenyatta is among African leaders who have congratulated Sahle on her election, saying it's a resounding demonstration of the changing fortunes for the distinguished women of Africa. President Sahle, who was born in 1950 in Addis Ababa, has served as an ambassador for Ethiopia in Senegal and Djibouti. She has also held a number of UN positions, including head of peace building in the Central African Republic. Immediately before becoming president, Sahle was the UN representative at the African Union. In the Ethiopian constitution, the post of president is ceremonial, with the prime minister holding the political power. Victor Nabiswa, KUTV.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President.
Mr. President, I wish to congratulate you on the assumption of the presidency of the Security Council for the month of December. Since this is also your last month as an elected member of this council, along with Libya, Vietnam, Croatia, and Costa Rica, I would like to pay tribute to the outstanding work you have done for the African continent and indeed for international peace and security. May I take this opportunity to also congratulate the incoming members, Nigeria, Gabon, Bosnia, Brazil, and Lebanon for their recent election. I hope we can count on your support during your tenure in Council. This is my first briefing before the Security Council following my appointment as the Special Representative of the Secretary General in the Central African Republic. It coincides with the presentation of the last report of the Secretary General on the situation in the Central African Republic before the transformation of BONUCA into an integrated peacebuilding office. For the past 6 months, I have held consultations with the stakeholders in the peace process. These include the political parties, the armed groups, the civil society, the development partners, regional organizations, and neighboring countries. I, therefore, would like to share with you my observations and initial thinking on how we could address the present situation in the country. Mr. President, the Central African Republic has experienced violence and confrontations between the government and the rebel groups since 1999. The signing of the various peace agreements, the Libreville Comprehensive Peace Agreement on 21 June 2008, and the holding of the inclusive political dialogue in December 2008 gave hope for a return to normalcy in the country. The process has now reached a critical stage with the successful holding of elections before the end of April 2010 and the completion of the DD part of the DDR operations before elections will determine the fate of the political process. These two major events are among key recommendations of the inclusive political dialogue and are critical for the lasting stabilization of the Central African Republic. An independent electoral commission was established on 8 October 2009, and the UN has signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Central African Republic on electoral assistance, while partners such as the EU, OIF, USAID, and AU are involved in the coordination of assistance to the Central African Republic for the conduct of the polls. In the meantime, a number of factors could derail the electoral calendar. These include attempts by some political actors to create a constitutional vacuum and request an extension of the mandate of the current administration beyond April 2010. The restrictions of the political leaders to carry out normal political activities, and the risk by the political leaders to incite hatred or divisions. In addition, the current level of insecurity generated by the activities of those armed groups that have not yet joined the peace process, the movements of the Lord's Resistance Army, LRA, in some parts of the country, as well as the delay in the implementation of the disarmament and demobilization program, pose a serious threat to the entire peace process. Economic progress so far accomplished has resulted in the attainment of completion under the HIPC initiative earlier this year. However, much more remains to be done to fight poverty. Government's program of civil service reform and fight against corruption, as well as the introduction of statutory declaration of assets by senior civil servants and heads of public companies, is encouraging. Audit of key economic sectors, such as forest